So, picture this. You are sitting in a meeting, the projector is humming, and someone pulls up this AI-generated analysis on the screen. Maybe it's a competitive breakdown of your industry or, a sprawling financial summary.
Right, and visually, it looks completely flawless. Like it's indistinguishable from the work of a senior analyst who just spent 3 weeks buried in spreadsheets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The structure is clean, the data is formatted perfectly, and the text just reads with this quiet, undeniable authority. But instead of everyone reviewing the conclusions and making a decision, there's this collective, just this pause.
Ah, yeah.
The pause. Right. It's not a verbal interruption. It's an internal, instinctual half-second of hesitation that sweeps through the room. Someone is probably already opening a new tab on their laptop to manually verify a percentage that just looks a little, I don't know, a little too confident.
Because that hesitation is basically the unspoken question hanging in the air, which is, can we actually trust this?
Yes. And nobody wants to be the one to halt the meeting, to ask it, but everyone feels it. And, that specific meeting room pause is practically paralyzing the modern enterprise right now. We are seeing a massive adoption gap between installing AI and actually trusting it to run the business.
Oh, absolutely. The data from the past year paints a really stark picture of this paralysis. There's a recent McKinsey report showing that while 88% of organizations are utilizing AI in at least one business function, only about a third have managed to actually steal it.
Wow, just a third.
Yeah. And then you have that MIT NANDA study revealing that 95% of generative AI pilots fail to deliver any measurable profit and loss impact.
Wait, 95%?
95%, it's huge. Organizations are trapped in what we call pilot purgatory. They test the tools, they, marvel at the demos, but when it comes to making high-stakes decisions based on the output, they freeze.
Which brings us to the core of today's deep dive. We are looking at two major sources to understand the mechanics of this paralysis. The first is a really comprehensive research report on AI trust architecture, and the second is this incredible article titled The Determinism Trap by Scott Wise.
Yeah, Scott Wise is fascinating. He's a 30-year transformation consultant, a speaker, and the author of a book called AI for Leaders, Amplify Your Impact.
Right, and his work over at scottwise.ai is grounded in this one crucial premise, which is that AI is not fundamentally a technology transformation, it is a human transition.
Which is such an important distinction. Framing it as a human transition completely shifts how we diagnose the problem in that meeting room.
So let's dig into the root cause of that hesitation. Our mission today is to show you why your workplace is structurally incompatible with AI, why traditional governance actually makes things worse, and ultimately how you can redesign your approach to break out of that pilot purgatory. So let's start with the architecture of a modern company. Like, why does a standard corporate workflow reject generative AI like a bad organ transplant?
Well, to understand the rejection, you really have to look at how organizations have been engineered for, the last century. Management pioneers like Max Weber and Peter Drucker, they built the modern enterprise to function as what sociologists call a trivial machine.
A trivial machine, what does that mean in this context?
So in cybernetics, a trivial machine is a system where the relationship between the input and the output is rigidly constant.
Oh, meaning action A plus action B must always equal result C.
Every single time. The entire foundation of corporate bureaucracy is variance elimination. We engineered trust through standard operating procedures, rigid sign-off chains, audit trails. It's known as calculus-based trust.
Okay, calculus-based trust.
Yeah, like you don't trust your company's payroll software because you think it's a quote-unquote good system. You trust it because it's deterministic. It is mathematically hard-coded to behave in a completely predictable manner.
That makes total sense for the deterministic enterprise. You want zero surprises in payroll. But generative AI is fundamentally not a deterministic engine. It doesn't just look up established rules in a database, right?
Far from it. Generative AI is inherently probabilistic. It operates token by token, which roughly translates to word by word or concept by concept. So it functions as a probability engine, constantly calculating the most statistically likely next piece of the pattern based on its training data.
So it's essentially guessing its way forward, even if those guesses are highly educated.
Yes, exactly. And that probability introduces unavoidable variance. Even if an engineer dials the technical settings, like the temperature parameter, all the way down to 0 to try and force a consistent answer, you still get unpredictability.
Wait, really? even at zero.
Yeah, because of underlying architectural mechanisms like mixture of experts routing.
Oh, I've seen that term. That's when the AI model is actually a collection of smaller, specialized submodels, right?
That's a great way to describe it, actually. When you send a prompt, a router within the AI decides which of those expert submodels is best equipped to handle your request.
Okay.
Because of slight variations in processing, or even just minute differences in the input, the router might send the exact same prompt to a different submodel on Tuesday than it did on Monday. So you feed the system identical inputs and you get different outputs.
Wow. It makes me think of traditional enterprise IT as a standard calculator. If I type 2 plus 2, I get 4. If I get 5, the machine is broken, we throw it out. But generative AI seems more like hiring a brilliant, highly read improvisational jazz musician.
Oh, that is the perfect distinction.
Right, like I could hand that musician the exact same sheet music 3 days in a row. They will play it slightly differently every time. It will sound incredible. It will fit the chords perfectly, but it is a probabilistic performance. It is not a fixed calculation.
Exactly. The calculator guarantees replication, but the jazz musician guarantees variation.
But hold on, though. If we are talking about high-stakes corporate functions, like financial compliance, healthcare records, equal opportunity hiring, a most likely guess is completely unacceptable. Doesn't inserting a probability engine into an A plus B equals C workflow just instantly break the entire system?
It fractures it completely.
Yeah.
The research actually refers to this as reliability degradation.
Reliability degradation.
Yeah. When you take a multi-step business workflow that requires absolute certainty and you inject a probabilistic AI layer into the middle of it, you compound the uncertainty with every single step. Take a chief financial officer handling regulatory reporting, for example. If they get audited, they have to prove the exact mathematical lineage of a specific number.
And they can't do that if the number was generated inside a probabilistic black box.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They cannot trace the logic, which creates massive compliance exposure. Or consider human resources and procurement. Traditional vendor evaluation relies on fixed, transparent rules, but AI models are susceptible to something called concept drift.
Concept drift. So the AI's internal definition of a good vendor might subtly shift over time without any human actually changing the rules.
You nailed it. The model continuously updates its internal weights based on new interactions or data patterns. So suddenly, the criteria it uses to evaluate a contract in December are slightly different from the criteria it used in June. The system is now violating the principle of equal treatment, which just destroys institutional trust.
Okay, if the underlying technology is this prone to variance and concept drift, that raises a really big psychological question for me. Why did that meeting room from our opening example almost nod along to the report? Like, if the AI is essentially guessing, why does it sound so incredibly convincing?
Well, we are experiencing a massive calibration crisis. In data science, a properly calibrated system has a confidence level that perfectly matches its accuracy. So if the system claims to be 90% sure about an outcome, it should statistically be wrong exactly 10% of the time.
But these large language models don't behave like that at all.
They don't, and it's because of how they are trained. During their development, these models undergo a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF.
Right, RLHF.
Human raters review the AI's answers and score them, and humans have this deeply ingrained bias. We reward decisiveness, and we penalize hedged language. We actually downvote the AI when it says, I don't have enough information to answer that.
Oh, wow. So we are actively training the AI to prioritize a confident style over actual factual substance.
We're teaching it that certainty is preferable to accuracy. In medical diagnostic testing, for instance, researchers have found that models will confidently hallucinate an entire patient diagnosis simply because the training rewarded providing a definitive answer over admitting a lack of clinical data. The AI's certainty is just a stylistic choice. It is not a statistical guarantee.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
It's like dealing with a remarkably charismatic, smooth-talking salesperson who is delivering entirely fabricated data while looking you dead in the eye. You almost believe them just because they sound so sure of themselves.
And this calibration crisis triggers a really fascinating psychological trap. There's a recent study out of Aalto University and LMU Munich that looked at how users assess their own performance when using tools like ChatGPT. Normally, we expect that as someone gains expertise in a tool, their ability to judge their own accuracy
Right,
improves.
it's like a reverse Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
Normally, the novice thinks they're a genius, and the expert knows how much they still have to learn.
But the study found that with AI, the Dunning-Kruger effect inverts. Users of all skill levels tend to overestimate the quality of their AI-assisted work. And shockingly, the higher a person's AI literacy, the more overconfident they become and the less precise their actual output is.
Wait. We've been told for years now that the silver bullet for enterprise adoption is AI literacy. Send the team to prompt engineering seminars, teach them the tool. Are you saying that by making them better at prompting, we're actually making them more vulnerable to blindly trusting flawed outputs?
It is a massive vulnerability. Scott Wise calls this the determinism trap. By treating AI like a standard software tool to be mastered, we trigger a cognitive phenomenon known as cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading, because they think, hey, I wrote a highly sophisticated prompt, therefore this highly sophisticated looking output must be factually correct. So they just stop doing the mental work.
Precisely. They unconsciously disengage their metacognitive double-checking skills. They offload the burden of critical thinking to the machine. And this psychological trap creates severe operational damage. It introduces what researchers call the supervisor's
The
tax.
supervisor's tax. I mean, if everyone is offloading their critical thinking, that has to be causing massive financial and operational nightmares when the outputs are actually implemented. Let's dig into that.
So the promise of AI is massive efficiency gains, right? But the research reveals that intensive AI use actually increased the workload for 77% of knowledge workers.
77%. The tool designed to automate their work is making them work longer hours. And that's because of that unspoken hesitation from the meeting room.
Exactly. Because the system is probabilistic, that lingering doubt never really goes away. So employees end up spending all the time they supposedly saved just verifying the AI's outputs. They have to double-check the math, track down the citations, verify the logical leaps. That auditing process, that is the supervisor's tax.
We basically hired a super fast intern who lies convincingly, and now senior staff spend their entire day auditing the intern's work.
That's spot on. And that auditing is exhausting because of accountability diffusion. In a traditional deterministic organization, accountability has a very specific address. If a quarterly financial report is wrong, the specific person on the sign-off chain who approved it is responsible.
Right, Jim in accounting signed off, so Jim owns the mistake.
But with an AI-generated workflow, accountability diffuses into the ether. Where does the human intent end and the model's statistical inference begin? The research explicitly notes that diffused accountability, in practice, is no accountability at all. No one in that meeting room wants to personally own the risk of a probabilistic guess, which is why everyone freezes.
I know exactly how corporate thinking works, though. When faced with a risk like this, the immediate reflex is to just slap a new governance checklist on top of it. Add 3 more layers of management approval, restrict the use cases, mandate a compliance review. Does that bolt-on risk management actually solve the accountability problem?
It fails entirely. A recent survey showed only 25% of organizations even have a formal AI governance structure, and the vast majority of those treat it as post-execution compliance. They let the AI do the work and then try to check it afterward.
Right, but you can't retrofit deterministic rules onto a probabilistic model.
You really can't. A governance overlay doesn't change the underlying architecture. The system is still guessing, humans are still falling for the confidence illusion, and accountability remains completely dispersed. Bureaucratic friction just does not equal structural safety.
Okay, so traditional enterprise architecture completely fails with AI. It's an incompatible match. If we can't govern it with traditional checklists, how do we fundamentally redesign trust? Where do we even look for a working model?
Well, we have to look outside the traditional enterprise, toward industries that have successfully managed probabilistic risk for decades. Aviation is a prime example. NASA's aviation safety program does not rely on deterministic if-then rules to predict accidents because flight variables are far too complex. Instead, they use Bayesian belief networks.
Bayesian belief networks. Those are the statistical models that map out interconnected probabilities, right?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, if X happens, Y will break, it calculates the shifting odds.
Exactly. It constantly updates the probability of an event as new evidence comes in. Like, if the weather changes and a specific sensor has historically been 80% reliable in that weather, the network updates the overall risk profile of the flight. It manages the odds, it doesn't try to enforce absolute rules, and we also see this in the medical field.
Oh, how so?
Well, diagnostic uncertainty is a daily reality for physicians, right? And to build patient trust, they rely on the RAPS framework.
RAPS. That stands for Recognize, Acknowledge, Partner, Seek Support. Correct.
That's the one. Imagine a doctor looking at a really complex set of symptoms. Instead of projecting false certainty like an AI model does, they use RAPS. They explicitly recognize the limitations of the data. They acknowledge the uncertainty to the patient, saying, look, the tests lean toward this diagnosis, but there is a margin of error. They partner with the patient on a treatment plan that includes monitoring for alternative outcomes.
So they explicitly highlight the uncertainty rather than hiding it behind a confident facade.
Because transparency is what builds the trust. And we are also seeing regulatory bodies adapt to this. The U.S. Treasury recently released the Financial Services AI Risk Management Framework. Rather than post-execution checklists, it demands that controls like lineage tracking and continuous drift detection are embedded directly into the AI pipelines from the design phase.
Okay, that addresses the mindset, which is huge. But what about the actual technology architecture? How do we stop the AI from running wild and just burning tokens on every single transaction?
This is perhaps the most exciting development in the research. It's the shift toward the compiled AI paradigm.
Compiled AI.
Yeah. Currently, companies let AI run freely during execution. So an agent reads an incoming customer email, evaluates the sentiment, drafts a response, and sends it. Every single email requires the AI to improvise anew, which maximizes token costs and guarantees variance.
Right, because the jazz musician is improvising a brand new solo for every single customer. So how does compiled AI change that?
Compiled AI fundamentally separates the workflow. Instead of using the AI at the moment of execution, you use its incredible reasoning capabilities during the design phase. You feed it your policies, your goals, and your parameters, and you ask it to design the perfect workflow logic.
Wait, so the AI is acting as the architect, not the bricklayer. It writes the standard operating procedure as a script-like Python code.
Exactly. It generates deterministic code based on its probabilistic reasoning. Then, a human expert audits that static code one time. Once it is approved, you basically turn the AI off. You compile that logic, and you use that static code to execute the next 10,000 customer emails.
Oh, that is brilliant. The execution phase requires 0 tokens. And because it is static code, it guarantees 100% reproducible compliance.
You capture the incredible innovation of AI during the design phase, but you wrap it in the safety and reliability of a deterministic machine for execution.
It's like having a visionary engineer design a groundbreaking bridge, but then you build the actual bridge out of solid steel, not the engineer's imagination. You define exactly where the machine stops and the human takes over.
That's a great analogy. And that transition brings us back to Scott Wise's core philosophy from AI 4 leaders. He argues that moving past the determinism trap is no longer a technology question. It is a profound leadership imperative. Leaders must stop asking, can I trust this AI output? And start asking, what does trustworthy use of this system actually require from me?
That requires a total rewiring of how managers view their responsibility.
It really does. Wise introduces a framework called the agency continuum. It maps out 5 distinct modes of delegating power, ranging from sanctuary, where humans retain absolute control to protect moral accountability, all the way across the spectrum to machine, where the AI is granted full autonomous execution rights.
Navigating that spectrum requires a new leadership skill called meta-sovereignty.
Meta-sovereignty. The power to consciously decide who holds the power in any given process. Precisely. The human capacity to intentionally decide how much agency to delegate to a system and where to draw the line.
If this truly is a human transition, as Wise says, what is the absolute first step a leader listening to this deep dive should take tomorrow morning to break their team out of pilot purgatory?
The first step is actively redesigning your workflows to explicitly define human decision rights. You have to pull accountability out of the ether and reconcentrate it back into human hands. And you do that by mandating 3 specific human filters before any AI output is acted upon. Accuracy, alignment, and authenticity.
Accuracy, alignment, and authenticity.
Okay. Is the output factually true? That's accuracy. Does the strategy align with our core institutional goals? Alignment. And does the communication sound authentically like us? Those are not compliance steps that can be automated by another piece of software. Those are complex judgments that require human metacognition. The moment a leader applies genuine discernment using those 3 filters, accountability has an address again.
Reclaiming accountability is the only way to cure that meeting room paralysis. We have covered incredible ground today. We started by dismantling the illusion of the deterministic A plus B equals C enterprise. We explored the danger of the confident AI and how teaching our teams prompt engineering without teaching critical thinking just accelerates that reverse Dunning-Kruger trap.
Yeah, and we examined the very real financial drain of the supervisor's tax, where highly paid employees are exhausted from endlessly auditing probabilistic guesses because accountability has completely diffused.
And most importantly, we explored the blueprint for redesigning trust, from aviation's Bayesian models to the compiled AI architecture that separates probabilistic design from deterministic execution. And above all, the need to step up and manage the human transition.
It really requires an entirely different lens for viewing the AI revolution.
It really does. If you are listening to this and realizing your organization is currently stuck in the determinism trap, you need to engage with Scott Wise's work on moving from being simply AI curious to truly AI capable. You can find his book, AI for Leaders, Amplify Your Impact, and a wealth of resources at scottwise.ai. That's scottwise.ai. His insights are essential for navigating the mechanics of trust in this new era.
It really is required reading for anyone managing this transition.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to turn over in your mind. If we successfully redesign our organizations, if we use compiled AI so the machine handles all the complex probabilistic ideation, and our static software handles all the perfect deterministic execution, what distinctly human cognitive skills are we inadvertently letting atrophy in the middle?
That is the ultimate question. If the machine becomes both the creative engine and the infallible executor, who are we becoming?
So the next time you are sitting in that meeting room and someone puts a flawless AI analysis up on the screen and you feel that half-second internal pause, don't ignore it. Ask yourself not just where the data came from, but what your role is in trusting it.